Seattle Seahawks will go to the Atlanta Falcons on Saturday, January 14th for the early NFC Divisional playoff game. None of the wildcard teams were able to advance last weekend, which means that all 8 divisional champions are playing this weekend. For the first time since 2011, the divisional round will feature only division winners. All 4 teams coming off of a bye week are favored, including the Atlanta Falcons, who have climbed up to a 4.5-point favorite over the visiting Seattle Seahawks. The total is sitting at 51 early in the week. All 4 favorites covered against the spread last weekend. The Seattle Seahawks covered as a 9.5-point favorite last weekend and won 26-6 over the Detroit Lions, who really ran about as bad as a team can run. They were on the wrong end of every questionable officiating call and fell victim to a couple of key circus catches from the Seahawks receivers. That being said, Seattle finally buckled down and played a quality game. It came on short rest, but it was just the second cover for Seattle since early December. Seattle has won at least one playoff game in every postseason since 2012 and 10 in a row at home. Seattle goes from facing a team that has not won a playoff game since 1991 to facing a team that has only won 2 playoff games since 2004. The Seahawks are certainly built for the postseason, and it showed in the win over Detroit. The Lions only gained 231 yards, and the Seahawks burned up a ton of clock time by going 9 of 16 on 3rd down and 2 of 2 on 4th down. The Lions were 2 of 13 on money downs, and it showed. It was a good performance overall for Seattle. They came out of the game healthy, established a running game with 4.7 yards per carry, and looked like a much more focused team defensively. Russell Wilson was 23 of 30 for 224 yards and 2 touchdowns in pretty suboptimal throwing conditions. A trip to the Georgia Dome on the fast track might help in a pretty big way. Thomas Rawls ran for 161 yards and a touchdown in a performance that the Seahawks desperately needed. If Seattle is going to win this game, the Seahawks are going to have to hold up their end offensively. Keep in mind that it was a 10-6 game going into the 4th quarter before the Seahawks were able to wear down the Lions. The Seahawks team is not the same team that we've seen in past years. There are a lot of flaws that have been obscured by the sheer amount of talent. The offensive line has struggled, though it did not as much last week. The biggest flaw is that the defense is down a few notches without Earl Thomas. The perception is that the Seahawks can just flip the switch whenever they need to, and they did appear more focused and gap responsible last time out. But the Lions were also outside with a one-dimensional offense on a terrible night to throw the football. Matt Stafford, who came into the game injured, was only 18 of 32 for 205 yards. He was sacked 3 times, missed throws, and made it easy for the Seahawks defense. Matt Ryan isn't as likely to do that, and it puts a lot of pressure on the offensive side of the ball for Seattle. It's not a coincidence that the total for this game is over 50, and we've rarely seen that for the Seahawks in the playoffs. The Atlanta Falcons wrapped up their regular season with an 11-5 mark straight up and 10-6 against the spread. Atlanta failed to cover in the finale against New Orleans to snap a streak of 3 straight covers. The Falcons won and covered with a 19-point win over Arizona coming out of their regular season bye week. When the Seahawks and Falcons met in Seattle earlier on this season, Matt Ryan had a big day. Ryan did throw an interception, but he was 27 of 42 for 335 yards and a touchdown. Now the venue is different, and so are both teams. The Falcons have been one of the most improved teams in the NFL throughout the season. Matt Ryan enters this game after posting an outstanding regular season with 4,944 yards passing on a completion percentage just a hair below 70%, with 38 touchdowns against just 7 interceptions. Second-year head coach Dan Quinn and highly coveted offensive coordinator Kyle Shanahan have already planned for Seattle once this season. Atlanta will be the healthiest that they have been in quite some time, which will include Julio Jones, who missed some time late in the season. Jones caught 83 balls for 1,409 yards during the regular season. He makes every skill player better, so the Falcons' offense has no restrictions in this game. The concern for Atlanta clearly has to be the defense. The Falcons' defense wasn't bad, but there's a reason that the Falcons were 13-2 to the over with an offense that was adjusted for by odds makers throughout the season. Atlanta gave up 25.4 points per game, but it was the 5.8 yards per play that really stood out. Only Miami and Oakland gave up more total yards among the playoff teams, and we saw how that worked out for those two squads. The defensive coaching staff has to be scrambling this week to find an answer for Thomas Rawls if the Seahawks actually have their running game in place. Atlanta gave up 4.5 yards per carry, which was tied for 5th worst mark in the NFL. The other worry in this game for Atlanta is that Kyle Shanahan has been entertaining job offers for open head coaching positions. It's the second year that this has happened with Shanahan, so it's not uncharted territory, but it does take away from some of the game preparation. The Seattle Seahawks are not going to be an easy out. For all of the numbers that Matt Ryan has put up in the regular season, he's posted a 9-7 touchdown interception ratio in the playoffs, with a 1-4 record in his 5 games. There's no reason to read a ton into that, especially because he was 30-42 for 396 yards and 3 touchdowns in the loss to San Francisco back in 2013. But he does have some critics to silence. Seattle is traveling cross-country on a relatively short week after last Sunday's playoff game, so that is significant. Atlanta should win the game, and they could very well run away with it. But Seattle has the better defense, even without Earl Thomas, and has a quarterback that can take care of the football and likely move it on Atlanta. Our pick and prediction is for the Seattle Seahawks at +4.5 points.